I didn't see Shazam this weekend. But who gives a shit? That's old news by this point, Daddy-O. This week, it's all about Hellboy. Yes, friends, the third big screen adaptation of Mike Mignola's classic Dark Horse series is making its way to the big screen. And it's a movie that I'm still kind of confused by. Like, I'm not sure why it exists exactly. On the one hand, this movie is supposed to take the character in a brand new direction, one that's more in line with the dark pulp horror roots of the original comic book. But the trailers for the movie aren't selling us a dark horror film. They're selling us an action-adventure movie that also happens to have some scary monsters thrown in. They're even using upbeat rock songs in the trailers. That's not really a horror thing to do. Now, what's odd to me isn't the fact that they're seemingly lying through their marketing. People lie in their marketing all the time. What's odd to me is that usually when a franchise is about to be rebooted, it's for a specific reason. Usually they want to take the subject matter in a more serious direction, they want to go back to the roots of the subject matter, or they want to set it in a modern setting, something like that. Now, if they wanted to take Hellboy in a more action-adventure direction, that's fine. The problem is, we already had an action-adventure Hellboy movie. 2 of them, in fact. And both of them happen to have been directed by a beloved future Academy Award-winning director, who actively wanted to make a third one. But those movies did come out more than a decade ago, before the MCU and The Dark Knight came out and redefined what comic book movies truly are. They probably don't hold up as well as those films do, and even if they did, they're probably not even liked by that many people. Well, actually, the Guillermo del Toro directed Hellboy movies were not only very well liked back in the day, but they still hold up in 2019. So the question is, why are we not getting his Hellboy 3? Why are we getting this reboot instead? Let's take a look and see if we can find out. Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro. I know I pronounce his name wrong all the time. I'm trying to get it right, especially for this episode. The first live-action Hellboy movie came out in 2004. It was directed by Guillermo del Toro and starred Ron Perlman as the titular demon. The movie also featured Selma Blair as Liz Sherman, John Hurt as Professor Broom, and David Hyde Pierce and Doug Jones as Abe Sapien. David Hyde Pierce providing the voice, Doug Jones being the man in the makeup. The movie is kind of a loose adaptation of the first Hellboy comic, Seed of Destruction. It introduces us to Hellboy and his world and shows that he's a demon raised by humans working for the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, a secret organization dedicated to protecting the world from the occult and the supernatural. The film pits him against the real-world Russian mystic Grigory Rasputin. Rasputin has been resurrected and wants to use Hellboy to bring about the end of the world that he's prophesied to bring. The movie's story is actually fairly simple, but is packed with details and features that create this rich, fully realized world. The dialogue is often witty and clever, and just when it starts to feel too bogged down with exposition, the film backs it up with wildly inventive imagery that somehow melds Mike Mignola's artwork from the comics with Guillermo del Toro's own unique visual style. Seriously, I've seen a lot of comic book movies, and I've never seen a director whose own unique visual style matches up so seamlessly with the comic he's trying to adapt. I mean, people like Robert Rodriguez and Zack Snyder more or less had to change their own unique style to adapt Sin City and Watchmen respectively. Del Toro didn't have to do that. And all of this goodness would carry over to the sequel, Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, released in 2008 with more or less the same cast and crew intact. This time around, rather than trying to adapt an already existing Hellboy story, Del Toro and Mignola actually create a brand new one specifically for the screen, one that focuses more on the fantastical elements of Hellboy rather than the pulpy elements of the original. Now in this film, Hellboy and team are up against Prince Nuada, an elven prince who seeks to kill all humans by summoning the Golden Army, a battalion of metal robots. The story really just serves as a vehicle for Del Toro to go all out with creature design, and it shows. There are more monsters and cool devices this time around, each one more interesting than the last. I won't say that Hellboy 2 is a better film than Hellboy 1, but I will say that the sequel does best the original in two aspects. The first is with regards to the primary antagonist. Prince Nuada is just a much more compelling villain than Rasputin was. I don't know if it's because Nuada has more screen time in the Golden Army compared to Rasputin's in the original, or if it's because he's an original Del Toro creation, but he just feels like a more complete, intimidating opponent for Hellboy. Also, the pace of Hellboy 2 is just much quicker than it is in Hellboy 1. Hellboy 1 isn't slow or boring by any means, but it's a 2-hour movie that really does feel like a 3-hour movie. Every scene just feels so long, partially because they're trying to explain a lot to you in a short amount of time, and also you get the sense that Del Toro really didn't want to cut anything, like he couldn't bring himself to remove anything from the finished piece. Hellboy 2, on the other hand, still has a lot of exposition and filler bits, but it moves so much faster, and the film is better off for it. But then again, by contrast, Hellboy 2 is also a much more lighter, often funnier film, whereas Hellboy 1 is much more darker and more in line with what the comics are. So it's a give and take. I would say that overall, both films are about equal. But regardless, both films truly are incredible works of cinema that act as both commercial entertainment and artistic statement at the same time. Both keep the fantasy and horror elements of Mignola's comic intact, bringing the pages to life like few comic book adaptations have ever done. For his part, Del Toro brings to life everything in this world like only he can. The man is known for his love of monsters, and it really shows in these films, especially the second one. Everything he does is in service to the characters and moving the story forward. He doesn't really worry about making a Guillermo del Toro movie because, like I said before, his style matches the comics so well. The only thing he really adds is this family drama element, particularly the relationship between Hellboy and Liz. What could have easily come across as a tacked on, non-essential part of the story wound up being a very important part of the overall experience. He created real characters who felt like real people with a real relationship, even if the real people are actually demons and pyrokinetics. Both films received widespread acclaim upon original release from both critics and fans. For a lot of the movie-going public, myself included, this was their first introduction to the work of Guillermo del Toro and the types of crazy movies that he likes to make. The first movie in particular I'm pretty fond of, probably because it came out at the height of special edition DVD releases, where they would re-release the movie in a special collector's edition or a director's cut with like 100 more discs or whatever with bonus features. And because I'm a crazy person, I actually went out and got the 3-disc director's cut. It features a 20-minute extended version of the movie, so if you thought it was already long enough, here's another 20 minutes for you. But it also featured a behind-the-scenes documentary called Seeds of Creation, a documentary that has a longer runtime than the actual movie. Now, Seeds of Creation is definitely worth a watch because it covers pretty much the entire production of the film, from concept art to actual filming to creating the creatures to ADR of all things. But Seeds of Creation isn't just a great window into how movies are made. It's also a great window into seeing just how enthusiastic Del Toro is about Hellboy. Every time he's on screen, he just oozes enthusiasm and passion for the character and his world. It's not something you often see of directors who are doing a movie like this. And this passion was very infectious because it spread to the entire cast and crew. In addition to these live-action movies, Del Toro, Mignola, and even Ron Perlman, Selma Blair, and Doug Jones all got together and did other Hellboy projects in addition to the movies. There were 2 direct-to-DVD animated films, Sword of Storms and Blood and Iron, both of which were actually pretty good, and the cast from the movie reprised their roles here. The team also came back for a PS3 and Xbox 360 game, Science of Evil, which wasn't very good, but Bruce Campbell was in it as Lobster Johnson, so it had that going for it. So, here you have 2 very good comic book movies that everybody seemed to enjoy. Both have been made by an acclaimed director who openly talked about how much he loved the property. Why wouldn't you let this guy go ahead then and make a third one? Lloyd Levin, the producer of the upcoming Hellboy movie, said that Del Toro actually passed on the chance to do another Hellboy film. And rather than try and do Hellboy 3 without him, they decided to take the character in a brand new direction, one that wouldn't step on the shoes of Del Toro and his previous work. Now that certainly sounds plausible, but again, like I've been saying, Del Toro loves Hellboy and was actively trying to get a third movie made all the way up until 2017 when he officially called it quits. No, what I think happened is a lot more obvious and a lot more depressing. It really just comes down to Hollywood accounting. See, Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2 were really well liked by those who saw them, but the problem is not a lot of people actually saw them. When Hellboy 1 was released in 2004, it made decent money, but didn't set the world on fire. It wasn't a big box office smash. It's believed that the reason why it wasn't a bigger hit was because it was released around Easter time. And in 2004, around Easter time, a lot of people went to go see The Passion of the Christ instead. I know that sounds silly now, but you gotta understand, that movie was a big deal back in the day. It made Marvel money, somehow. When Hellboy 2 was released in 2008, it also started out very strong. In fact, it even made more money its first week than its predecessor did. The problem was that it couldn't keep the momentum going because 1 week after Hellboy 2 was released, The Dark Knight was released, and pretty much just cut Hellboy 2's legs out from under it. So yeah, you have two films that everybody liked, but you also had two films that not everybody went to go see. So you can kind of see from a studio perspective that it really didn't make sense to continue making movies about a franchise that wasn't profitable, which sucks big time because not only did the people who made these movies wanted to make a Hellboy 3, but the people who saw these movies definitely wanted a Hellboy 3. And not just because Hellboy 2 ended on a big ass cliffhanger that needs resolving. The people who've seen these movies just really like these movies, and they really like the fun and inventive ways Del Toro brought this universe to life, and they wanted to see more of it. Between 2008 and 2017, even while he was working on Crimson Peak, Pacific Rim, The Shape of Water, and while he was attached to direct the Hobbit movies for a short period of time, Guillermo del Toro actively tried to get Hellboy 3 greenlit. Everybody who worked on the first two films also joined in and wanted the third one to be made, including Ron Perlman. Ron Perlman even got dressed up as Hellboy as part of a Make-A-Wish event, and that event actually kickstarted him and Del Toro to go faster than ever and harder than ever to try and get Hellboy 3 made. But unfortunately, we know how the story ends. Del Toro ultimately could not get his vision of a third Hellboy movie to fruition. Instead, we got this new movie with a new director and a new cast. And look, I don't mean to be hard on this new Hellboy movie. I'm not trying to knock it. I actually think it looks pretty good, and I think David Harbour will be a really good Hellboy. It's just a shame that we didn't get to see the Del Toro version. I think it could have been something truly epic and amazing. It's rare that you get a director who's as into the source material as he was. And it's rarer still that you get a director whose own sensibilities match up with that of the source material so flawlessly. Sure, somebody like Sam Raimi is definitely a Spider-Man fan, but his Spider-Man definitely wasn't Steve Ditko's or John Romita's. It was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy was just as much his as it was Mike Mignola's. These two films are truly unique films that you don't see very often, if at all. If this new Hellboy movie is indeed going for a darker, more horror-based route, awesome, that'd be cool to see. The new movie is rated R, so they can get away with a lot more. But I'm getting the sense that no matter how good they are, there's no way they can be as good as the Guillermo del Toro directed Hellboy films. They're just as good now as they were back in the day. So if you haven't seen them in a long time, or if you haven't seen them at all, definitely go out and check Hellboy and Hellboy 2: The Golden Army. They are two of the best comic book films ever made, still. But of course, that's just my dumbass opinion. What do you think about the Guillermo del Toro directed Hellboy films? Did you enjoy them? Have you even seen them? Are you excited for this new movie coming out? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. Quick anecdote, I was at New York Comic Con in 2008 and actually went to the Hellboy 2 panel, and Guillermo del Toro actually brought out all of the puppets and creatures and people in costume and makeup from the film. They were at New York Comic Con in full getup, and they were just walking around. I wish I still had the pictures from that because it was so cool. The man really did give a shit about Hellboy. Check out the description below for Amazon links to not only the Hellboy movies, but some Hellboy comics that I think you'll enjoy. Also be sure to check out the link to Wulff Den apparel. We still have our winter line, even though winter is pretty much over, but get yourself a nice hoodie for the next winter that's gonna come, unless the apocalypse happens. And of course, don't forget that we have new videos every Tuesday and Wednesday, with Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern being Wulff Den Live. So subscribe to see all of that, like this video, and share it with a friend who also doesn't understand why Del Toro isn't making his Hellboy 3. I mean, the man did eventually win an Oscar, and have you seen Pan's Labyrinth? Pan's Labyrinth is like a masterpiece, so imagine what he could do with a third Hellboy film. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.